England are preparing to take on Australia in what is not quite a crucial T20 World Cup match, but it is significant. If England were to lose the game, then suddenly net run rate becomes all important in their quest for qualification for the Super 8s. Over the next half hour, we'll be hearing from Stephen Finn, from Jeff Lemon, and from inside the England camp, we'll be hearing from Jofra Archer and Johnny Bairstow, as well as reacting to Scotland's famous victory over Namibia. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Jeff. We are speaking from underneath the palm trees at our hotel, which is also home to the Haitian national football team as they prepare for a World Cup qualifier on Sunday evening against Barbados. And one of those things you don't necessarily anticipate when you head down for breakfast early in the morning.
Get in. I'm all in on Haiti for the World Cup qualification. Why not? I mean, they've been having a rough trot of things over in their home country, but they're here now. They've got a target ahead of them. They're going to play Barbados. It was quite interesting when suddenly about 40 incredibly fit young men rocked up at the hotel speaking French last night. One of them wandered into my room today by accident. I didn't fill you in on that story. He just opened the wrong door and came in and then looked very surprised to see me and then apologised profusely in French and left again. So they're very nice, slightly geographically confused, but it's nice to be able to hang out with them.
I'd like it if you ended up at centre-half for the Haitian national football team, Jeff, but, you know, I imagine Barbados would like that as well. Stephen Finn, England against Australia then, it's a big game, this, and it's made all the bigger because of the fact that England's game against Scotland got washed out.
Yes, it does, yeah. Added importance, isn't there, on this for England, and the added rivalry between the two teams and the history of the battle between the two teams. But I think most importantly, England will just be desperate to get their tournament off and running and feel like they've got some degree of rhythm about their play. They had a rain-truncated series against Pakistan as their preparation for this. Their first game has been half washed out, in which they looked a little bit rusty with a couple of misfields and the no ball of Mark Wood that led to a wicket that didn't count. So yeah, there's certainly areas to tighten up, and I think a full game of 20 overs aside will be good for England, but they're going to have to be on it because of that washout against Scotland.
Well, they just haven't had an opportunity to play yet, really. They got that handful of overs in. The other teams have at least been able to spend at least one full game out on that pitch, have a look at it, start to figure out how you might try to bat on it. I think that's the real point of interest for me, is that England have been so gung-ho about and so confident about attacking batting. That's been their mantra for nearly a decade now in the white ball stuff, especially, and more recently in Test cricket. So they've got that mentality that they want to come out there and put the foot down and dominate, but it's not necessarily the kind of surface you can do that on. So can they be the team to attack on that surface, or do they have to shift things around a bit like they did in the final that they won in 2022?
This is the thing, isn't it, Finney? Because a lot of the conversation post the World Cup in the 50-over format in 2023 was that England hadn't quite played their natural game. They'd been a little bit uncertain about how to approach things, and clarity was needed to be found again in this tournament. What are you looking to see from the England side against Australia and going forward?
Well, it certainly feels as though they learned their lessons from chopping and changing that team in the series against New Zealand. Before that 50-over World Cup, I think that left them ill-prepared and not knowing their best team when they went into the tournament, and when they were there, they were timid and they didn't look like the England that everyone has come to know and love watching play white ball cricket over the last 8 years or so. So I think that by being certain on their squad and having a set formula in terms of their batting lineup looks very settled, and as though no one's going to break into that. So everyone knows their roles. The batting unit especially have been playing in the IPL, which I think is important to know the rhythm of the game. The only thing that is a minor concern is that the bowling unit of Archer, Wood, Jordan, Rashid haven't really been playing too much cricket in the build-up to this, so they'll have to hit their straps early.
Jeff, remind us why this game is so significant, given net run rate and everything else, and how this all might play out.
Okay, so we've got 5 teams in the group. We've got 4 teams of 5. Each of those groups have 2 big dog teams in it, essentially, and then 3 who wouldn't be expected to go through. But as we've seen with the USA knocking off Pakistan, Canada knocking off Ireland, you can't really make those assumptions. Scotland, this game, Australia, if they go on to beat Namibia and to beat which they would expect to do, then they don't actually need to win this game against England. It wouldn't matter, they'd qualify anyway. England maybe do need to win this game, because if they lose this one, then they're at the mercy of Scotland having a good run. And if Scotland, say, beat Oman more heavily than England can beat Oman, then they might be ahead of them, the Scots, on net run rate, and end up level on points at 5 points apiece. So this raises a very tasty prospect. The last game in the group, Henry, is Australia versus Scotland. If Scotland are on 5 points and England are on 5 points and Australia have already qualified, if, say, Scotland are just ahead of England on net run rate and a heavy Australian win would knock Scotland out and see England go through, Australia could go the go slow like 1999, say chase 110 in 19.4 overs, make sure they don't damage the Scottish net run rate, and knock England out that way.
Jeff, to suggest such a thing.
Yeah, there might be a few people raising eyebrows if that happened, but Australia will afford themselves the luxury of being able to do that if they get in that position, although the anti-corruption officer might want to have a look at it.
What about England against Australia in terms of how they approach the game and how they approach playing against a side that they know so well? Because it's very easy when, I suppose, you're playing on home conditions, you've got the noise of the England crowd behind you, and it's an Ashes series and everything else. But when there's all of the England-Australia narrative, but you're in a neutral location on an awkward pitch, and you've still got the challenge of Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, all of those things, as well as the pressure of a World Cup, it's going to be quite an awkward game to approach for England.
It will, but I think they're going to have the added benefit of Australian bowlers won't have seen much of Salt and Jack, so they've seen them in the IPL, but they wouldn't have bowled at them all that much in a game situation, even though Stark and Salt are clearly teammates, so they'd have faced each other in the nets. But I do think those added fresh faces make it not seem like it's just the same players playing against the same players in another series or another game between Australia and England. But also the pressure in this tournament has done funny things to teams. Look at Pakistan yesterday, and I think the pitch isn't going to be a free-flowing, easy-scoring pitch. There's not been a game yet in this tournament where there's been a score over 200, which I think is a sign of things to come. And as this tournament goes on, the scores aren't going to get higher, it's just going to get harder to score because of how dry the pitches are. So I don't anticipate it being a free-flowing game, but I do anticipate it being tight.
And it'll be interesting, given that and given those conditions, what Australia might do bowling-wise. They picked Nathan Ellis for the first game, left out Pat Cummins to rest him, presumably. But Ellis is useful on those kind of surfaces, those tricky paced surfaces with the variations and so on that he has. Would they look to keep him in the side? Does Mitchell Stark miss out? He did go off the field with some sort of injury problem. The official word is that it was just cramp and nothing to worry about, but who knows? We don't always get the most transparent answers from the Australian camp, so maybe they rest him for this game to try to make sure that nothing else goes wrong, and Ellis plays again. Presumably Cummins will come back in after a successful IPL, captained Hyderabad to the final there, so he doesn't miss a lot of games of cricket for Australia, and Josh Hazelwood will probably be there as well, but just that configuration of the faster bowlers will be interesting.
Well, let's hear from the England camp. I spoke to Johnny Bairstow about what it's going to be like playing against Australia in this important game.
T20 World Cups and Barbados, England, Australia, 2010 comes straight to mind, doesn't it? So it's obviously a fantastic backdrop, a fantastic place to be playing cricket, and it's an awesome environment to be playing in.
That game takes on a little bit of extra significance, I guess, because of the frustrations of the Scotland game.
Yeah, look, you can't do anything about the weather. You come to Barbados, and probably the last thing that you're expecting is it to rain. So it's part and parcel of the game. We get plenty of it in England, and look, it's tournament cricket, and 1 point's better than none. And we'll go forward now, looking ahead to this game against Australia.
Feels as though the team's been sort of raring to go, ready to go, and the rain back in England, then here in Barbados. Are you feeling as a side that you're absolutely keyed up, ready to go, just eager to launch into this tournament?
Look, I think that the way we played against Pakistan when we did get on the field was really pleasing. I think as a group, whether guys have been playing out in India in the IPL or they've been playing in England, the contributions that they've made individually have been good. So yeah, everyone's raring to go like always. It hasn't changed anything with there being a bit of rain around. And also they're the things that you just have to cope with as a group. There's a lot of experience within the dressing room, and whether it rains or the conditions change or anything like that, you just have to adapt.
Australia are a side that you know all about. You know about that bowling attack particularly well. Is it fun renewing those challenges against a team like Australia?
Of course it is. Like you said, they've got a wealth of experience within them. They've played against us a lot. We've played against them a lot. We've got some guys that they probably haven't played against too much as well, which can be a really good thing. Salty and Jaxie up the top, coming up against Stark and Cummins. Obviously, Starky's played with Phil just recently in the IPL and everything that comes with that. So he'll know the dangers that Salty brings, and also vice versa. But they're great matchups, and it's great to have those little battles, if you like, leading into it.
And also the battle of the surfaces here, because they have been quite slow and low. What have you made of it?
To be honest with you, I've not been out there yet. It's something that you can't control. You can control certain things, but the pitch that gets put in front of you, you've got to adapt to it. So whether it's fast and bouncy or slow, low turning, you just have to be capable of changing the way in which you go about your game, and understand that it might not be a 200 pitch. It might be a 175 pitch or something like that.
I know your family are out here, and I know this is a special place for you, Barbados, as well. Is that somewhere you look forward to coming back to from a personal level too?
I think there's quite a lot of people that look forward to coming to Barbados, to be honest with you. It's an awesome place to be, and yeah, like you say, it holds a real nice memory in my mind from when I was growing up, and Dad came out on a few tours out here. So being in a little nipper, being dipped off the back of a boat into the ocean, thinking a shark was coming to bite you or something like that, and then coming to the cricket ground and seeing the passion and the love for the game of cricket out here is awesome.
And just finally, World Cup cricket, it is exciting, and you know you've got great memories of successes in World Cups. How nice is it to be playing an ICC event again?
Yeah, it's great. I was gutted to miss obviously the last T20 World Cup with my ankle, so to get another opportunity to play in a World Cup, to represent England, to be around the boys in tournament cricket is something that is really exciting, and we just can't wait to get going now. You mentioned earlier about Scotland being slightly disappointing with the rain, so it's now a case of we look forward to hopefully a fantastic spectacle on Saturday.
Well, Finney, Johnny Bairstow, quite lively for me. He was smiling a lot. He seemed in a good mood. And lovely answer, speaking about memories of coming here with his dad and the enjoyment of being in Barbados. It feels to me like this England camp, despite the frustrations, are actually in quite a good place.
Yeah, I think they'll have done a fair amount of work as a team in and around their franchise commitments between now and the previous World Cup. And I think they'll have learned from the way that they were in that World Cup, a bit standoffish, a bit timid, not quite themselves. I think they'll have learned from that. And I think if you're going to get knocked out of a tournament or you're going to play in a tournament, you want to have it on your terms. I don't think you want to leave that tournament with regrets about the way that you approached it. So you do get the feeling that even though England had that rain-affected game against Scotland the other day, and this does feel like a pretty important game for England in terms of the rest of their tournament, you don't feel as though they're going to go into their shells. And I think, the combination of new faces and some work together as a team will help them.
It is interesting, the significance of this game, because England can still qualify if they lose it, but it's something about the mental side, I guess, of starting well. And after that terrible 50-over campaign, and how recent that was, and how many players from that campaign are here, if they start things off badly here with that feeling that luck is against them, with the washout originally, you've got DLS calculations changing the targets and so on, that they were up against it in that first game. In a way, they got away with one, with not having to go out and try to score at 11 and over on a pitch where teams have struggled to score quickly. If they then lose the next game, then you've got a sequence, right? You've got a couple of bad results in a row, and picking it up from there could be more difficult, even though they would still fancy themselves a possibility to do that with a couple of big wins. But I think it's more about winning this game is important for England to feel like they're in a good frame of mind, whereas for Australia, I don't think that they would see this game as being that vital.
And actually, you look at the way Australia won the 50 over World Cup before Christmas. You look at the way that England won the last T20 World Cup. There was jeopardy going towards the back end of the group stages because slightly slow starts. England had that rain-affected game against Ireland, didn't they? That then threatened to derail them and their pursuit of that title. You want to be peaking at the right time. So yeah, it's not a disaster the way that England have started, but this tournament does come quick and fast, and they'll have to sharpen up, I think, and that starts tomorrow.
The other point in all of this is we are assuming rather that if England lose against Australia, Jeff, that the games against Namibia and Oman will be more straightforward. But if there's one thing that we've learnt in this competition thus far, just ask Pakistan, just ask Ireland, expect the unexpected.
Certainly on this surface, Oman played so well for the first 14, 15 overs of their match against Australia. If the catch that turns into a 6 from Marcus Stoinis is held, Australia are 4 down after, 14 overs, going at about 5.5 and over. They might have been struggling to make 120. They'd have a couple of hitters coming in who might come off or might get caught on the fence. And if Australia are defending 115, 120, 130 against Oman, then maybe it gets run down. Maybe you have an even bigger upset than the USA-Pakistan game. So you can't underestimate those teams, particularly in conditions like this, where those conditions do bring teams closer together. If you're out there facing a high firepower bowling attack and batting lineup on a flat one, a la the IPL early parts of that season, then yeah, they can make 250 and blow you away. But here, this allows teams to scrap. This allows teams that have got disciplined fielding and can hit a decent length. They don't need someone bowling super express. They don't need spinners shredding the ball, because they just need somebody who can put it on the right spot at 125 kilometres an hour instead of 145, and that might be just good enough.
One thing that we have been focusing a lot on is this pitch, particularly here in Barbados, Finney, and it seems like the medium pacers are really causing threat, getting that awkward bounce. How do you see England's express bowlers, Mark Wood and Jofra Archer, going?
Well, I think it's yet to be seen whether they play in tandem against Australia. I do anticipate Reece Topley coming in to the side because of his prowess with the new ball, his ability to swing it and his ability to cause batters problems inside those first 6 is something that even against Scotland the other day was missing. They didn't look like taking a wicket apart from a top edge inside those first 6 overs. So I feel as though he's going to be an important component of that bowling attack as we move through the tournament. But it just depends who he comes in for. I think the options are between either Mark Wood and Chris Jordan. I then think that batting comes into consideration, so I think Chris Jordan's ability to whack the ball at number 8 is something, or one of the reasons why he's been used there, and also his prowess with the old ball at the death is something that in the series before Christmas that England played against the West Indies, Chris Jordan wasn't here, Jofra Archer wasn't here, and the death bowling went round the park against a powerful batting lineup. So I think all things considered, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Reece Topley come in for Mark Wood to take that new ball.
One person we're going to see, hopefully, from an England perspective, plenty of, and I think maybe a world game perspective as well, is Jofra Archer. He's back playing again and doing so with a smile on his face. We headed to the Windward Cricket Club on Thursday morning, where England were training, a ground that Jofra Archer knows very well indeed. Sitting on a wooden bench painted green overlooking the outfield, Jofra arrived wearing a very loud pair of Louis Vuitton sunglasses and told me how nice it was to be back playing cricket and how he felt at the end of his mark when he played that game at his home ground of Bridgetown, Barbados.
It was a little bit emotional, to be honest.
Was it? Why?
Well, I feel that it's the first time that I've played at any cricket ground and maybe 80% of the people were there to see me. I actually knew my name and know how to pronounce my name properly as well. So now I have a family there, my old school, a lot of friends. And it was just a really respect. I felt that it was debuting all over again.
So your old school was there?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So what was the sort of thinking about? Was it a special day where they were given access to have the day off school to come watch?
Yes, they did, and it was still good to see that a lot of them actually came on, because sometimes, like back in the day, if we got the day off from school, like to go do something, sometimes some people just take the day off, but it was really nice to have that much support. It was hard not to notice the yellow shirts in the crowd.
Coming back to play in a World Cup, I mean, it's been such a long journey. How does it feel to be back playing right at the top?
It's always a great feeling, and yes, it has been a while. And like honestly, I feel like the time has flown. Yeah, you look back and like you see like the last game I played, and you can't believe it was that long ago. Honestly, so much has happened since then, and I'm just glad to be back and hopefully back for a while.
There would have been highs and lows during that journey. How has it been for you? No athlete likes to be off the field.
Yeah, but I probably don't want to sound a bit bad here, but being away from everything, it was alright. Obviously, like watching games and stuff on TV, and you wish you were there, and you wish you could have a part to play, but being given the opportunity to step away from the UK, do your rehab and just get away from it was really refreshing, because I feel like the worst thing you can be is injured and mentally burnt out as well. So I was really glad I got the opportunity to come back and rehab away from everything.
It looks like you're bowling as you ever have done. I mean, how does it feel like it's coming out?
No, it's fine. And like honestly, even with the injury last time, it just comes on sudden. Sometimes you don't even know. So again, I'm just trying not to worry about it too much, and I'm gonna just trust that the procedures and stuff that I got will actually hold up.
What about your workload in the tournament? Has that been set out? Do you know how it shaped up?
Yes and no. I feel like just the other day as well, I think our physio forgot that sometimes that my workloads have to be monitored, because I remember there was a training day, I think, I bowled, and then he had me down to bowl again. It was like the training was off, and he was like, oh yeah, I forgot. So sometimes you got to remember, although you might feel fine, sometimes you still got to remember that you still have to do your due diligence, you still have to take the precautions.
What about the prospect of success in a World Cup here in the Caribbean for you personally? How would that feel?
It feels amazing, and as I was telling someone earlier, like, this is probably going to be the first time that I could have the majority of my friends and family like at a cricket ground. Like it's great in the UK, but you can only get 4 or 5 maximum in that one time, obviously travel and what's not. But the thought that you can have so much support and everyone behind you, and you don't even have to go anywhere for it, it should hopefully keep me in good stead.
Is this the first step on a more wide return to international cricket, do you feel?
Not really. I just want to take every game on its merit, and it's a long tournament. We've not even got to the Super 8s yet. So, every game from now, I guess it's just a tick for me. Every game that I'm actually fit and I get through, I'm giving thanks for.
What about these animals, Jofra? We hear a lot about them. Dogs, parrots, talk us through.
Well, I won't do much talking. Well, when training's finished, I'll try to bring a couple over, because I don't live too far from here. So I already took Salty to see the dogs this morning, because he got here pretty early. So I just nipped there and nipped back. But when training's done, I'll bring one of the dogs over, because when I was rehabbing here, Mitch, our SNC, he came over a few times, just to go through gym and stuff with me. So he knows him quite a bit, so I'll bring him back so he can get a little reunion.
Jesse James, the parrot?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll see if I can squeeze a cage in the car as well. It's fine. Yeah.
Jofra Archer, he's an extraordinary character. He's got this so softly spoken. He talks about having these parrots on his shoulders, Jesse and James and the pets and everything else. But having him back in the World Game is brilliant, isn't it?
It's exciting. It is exciting. And I think if you're someone outside cricket, you might get a bit irritated. Why are you guys always talking about Jofra Archer? He's barely played, blah, blah, blah. But because when he does play, there's this electricity to what he does. The way that he came back last year, played a couple of ODIs, took 6 for 40 suddenly, and then got injured again and was out again. And there aren't that many other players who you would drop into a World Cup at so little preparation and have almost no dissent about whether they should be in that squad or whether they should be in that team. There was very little, he should play, a full season of T20 blast before he's allowed to play for England again. It was like, no, this guy's fit, he plays, because he has that ability to hit his rhythm straight away. And I think it is broader than an England thing, because anybody who watched him in 2019 through that World Cup and then through that Ashes series saw just how exciting he is, and that's what we've been. The frustration around him, I think, has mostly been frustration that we haven't been able to see him fulfil that potential that he promised in 2019, and maybe this is the first step towards doing that.
From a technical fast bowling point of view, Stephen, why is Jofra Archer so good? Why is he so different? And why are England so desperate to have him in the team?
Oh, well, yeah, he's very unique in the way that he delivers the ball. He delivers it from such a height that he gets awkward bounce. He angles the ball in towards right-handers, which in T20 cricket cramps them for room, and he swings that ball in sometimes towards them as well, and across the left-handers. He's also got very good changes of pace. He has a knuckleball, a leg cutter, a back-of-the-hand slower ball, and his arm pace always stays the same, so it's very difficult to pick up those unless you've either faced him a lot or you're in unbelievable form, and that's why he's such an exciting prospect for England, because of how versatile he is as a bowler. And I also think he has this ability to read the game. You watch the best bowlers bowl and they sense what's coming next, and they bowl the ball that batter is least likely going to want to face. And I think it's very rarely that you see Jofra Archer get lined up for 6 balls in a row and get whacked out the park. He always seems to have that innate ability to be able to guess what is coming next, and I think that's a really vital part of being a great T20 fast bowler.
And Australia will not relish facing a side that includes Mark Wood and Jofra Archer. We know that from what Mitch Marsh said in the pre-tournament presser. He said sort of jokingly to Jos Buttler, just one of them will do.
Yeah, it's interesting because Mitchell Marsh was the one player in that Australian team who wasn't bothered when Mark Wood showed up at Headingley during that test match and bowled express and took 5 wickets, but Mitchell Marsh clobbered him on the way to 100 just as he clobbered everybody else. So for him personally, I don't think it makes much difference. He's happy to play off the back foot or pull off the front foot even against really express bowlers. He's used to that, but it adds a different level of threat. I suppose the question is whether that's actually the most useful style of bowling on this wicket, because what we've seen in a couple of the games so far is that it's been the faster bowlers who've looked easier to hit at times. Mitchell Starc on occasion, Ruben Trumpelman for Namibia, where that extra pace has been not using what the wicket is offering in terms of confusing players, making them mistime their shots and that kind of thing. If it's ball speed through the air, and particularly if it's full, particularly if you can get to it as a low full toss at times by striding forward, then the pace through the air makes it easier to score square of the wicket.
Who's winning this game, Finney? England, Australia?
I'm just going to have a second to gaze into my crystal ball, but I think the toss is going to have a considerable impact on the game. I see it as it's a 1 o'clock start. It's the first time we've had a 1 o'clock start, I think, in this tournament so far in Barbados. The 3 o'clock start the other day, the last 5 or 6 overs were played when the sun had gone down and the floodlights was taking effect, and I think that made the ball come onto the bat a bit better, which I think is why Scotland managed to up their scoring rate in that period and hit the ball out the park. Outside of that, no one has managed really to time the ball apart from Marcus Stoinis on this surface. When it's in the daytime and the sun is on it and there's a high wind and the conditions don't change throughout the day, I think that is added importance, or that puts added importance on the toss and the team batting first when they do win that toss, and allowing the conditions to become more tired and it to get harder to score as the game wears on. So without wanting to sit on the fence too much, I think they're going to be 2 very evenly matched teams. It's going to be keenly contested, but I do think the toss could have a decent part to play.
I think it depends on game plans. We saw the Australians be willing to change the way that they would expect to play against Oman. They came out, they recognised how difficult it was. They slowed down their scoring. They revised their intended target down. They ticked along at a runner ball until the over came when Stoinis could hit those sixes and push the rate up. And even then, 164 is a pretty low target by modern T20 standards, but they were happy to get that. We've seen that with Australian teams where they're willing to do that. England teams of the current age are less willing to do that. They're more willing. They're more intent on saying that we have to keep playing in this super aggressive way, and that's the kind of way that might backfire. So I think it depends whether England are willing to be flexible with the conditions. If they just go full steam ahead in their usual way, it might not work for them.
We shall see. It was that Scotland game that you mentioned, Stephen, that really did show what this group could all be about and how it could all fall into place, with Scotland potentially being the side heading through to the Super 8. Really memorable game against Namibia. They've had a brilliant competition so far, giving a real threat to England, winning that game against Namibia.
Yeah, well, they've been very strong in their messaging, haven't they? As if they've had a sports psychologist in to say that you show no weakness when you're talking to the press. But they've been adamant the whole time that they're not here to just cause an upset. They're not here to have a free hit and see how they get on. They're here to seriously try and go further in the tournament than they ever have been before. And from what we've seen so far from them and the different facets that they have covered within the squad players that they have here, they're doing a blooming good job at it. They had England on the road the other day. There's no doubt about that. 90 for none with a revised target of 109 would not have been a walk in the park to chase down. And then yesterday, when they looked as though they were a bit dead and buried, with Namibia's experienced bowlers yet to bowl to try and close that game out, they managed to find the resilience when their backs were against the wall to get that win, and that cued big celebrations that we witnessed.
Jeff, this tournament has provided shocks. USA beating Pakistan, Canada beating Ireland, Scotland giving England a real run for their money before the game got curtailed. From the competition's point of view, we want to see more stories like this.
We do, and Scotland are a team that could deliver them. I mean, they're a proper cricket team these days. They're not made up of some part-timers. They're made up of people who are playing cricket at a professional level. They've got a lot of players in the English county system. They've got an advantage in a way over a team like Ireland. There is a drawback to getting full member status and test status, because that means that your players then become overseas players for counties to sign up, which means it's harder for counties to justify giving them a spot. Scottish players are able to play throughout the county system while being treated as local players, and we saw that contribute to the rise of Irish cricket when they got test status, and we've seen it contribute to the rise of Scottish cricket. It's been a difficult few years. They had a hugely damaging and difficult situation coming through their institutional racism review, the damning findings there. The entire board resigned at one point. They appointed a new chief executive who then quit after a few months. They've been cycling through administrators at the top level. They had a placeholder CEO for a time trying to get things back on track. And so through that really difficult off-field period, they've also managed to improve their on-field results. The Scottish women's team was qualified for the T20 World Cup that'll come later this year, and the Scottish men's team were one bad LBW away from qualifying in 2019 for the 50-over World Cup, when that was only 10 teams and trying to get into that tournament. They've qualified for this T20 World Cup. They were not cowed whatsoever when they came up against England. They obviously knocked off England in that 50-over game at the Grange a few years ago. They're a team that's got confidence and a team that feels like they can take it up to bigger nations, and why not knock off Australia if they're having a good day.